Hey there, guys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Finnovator with me, Stuart Bell. And I wanted to kick off the intro to this week's episode by saying a big thank you to those of you who have come on board with the latest project that we've launched, which is our Practice Success Portal. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we've recently launched a free, portal community site, we'd call it, where we've put not only every episode of the Finnovator, the video recording from the last 5 years in there, but also a bunch of other resources, including I created a free training module, which includes tools that covers sort of 5 of the most, I think, foundational pieces of training that I have on the program, which are around value proposition, about mapping out your growth journey. There's one in there about pricing, another one about client experience. And I know I think we're up to about 70 members at the moment, and I'm just loving where it's going. And in particular, I want to say shout out to the latest people who have come on board, like Chris. It's great to have you back on board. Lexi, Danielle, Mark, Kevin, Matt, who's back for a second run. There's so many names. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but I want to say to each and everybody who's joined me for this, thank you. This is something I've been working to for a while, and I'm really excited to see where this goes as a community of practice owners. And of course, if you don't know what I'm talking about, but you are interested in finding out more about what this is about, maybe checking out a little bit about what I do beyond just listening here, head over to success.audere.com.au. I'll put the link in the show notes and jump in there, register and join us. I also wanted to say a big thank you to someone who calls themselves The Sentinel 74, who was kind enough to leave a review for the podcast. I really appreciate that, man. This is one of the things is when I get a review, it gives me a real sense of what people like from it, and it just gives me a bit of a boost. And his comments were brilliant, like a virtual business card. I love that. This is a great podcast. Lots of valuable, useful, practical tips on how to run and grow a financial planning practice. Keep up the good work, Stuart. Love your podcast interview style and my sense of humor. Thank you very much. If only my kids felt the same way about that, but that's another story. Okay, with that in mind, and again, please do take a moment just to leave a review, because it means a lot to me, and it'll also give people a sense of whether this is something that is worth their time as well as yours. So that aside, I wanted to tell you a bit about today's episode, which is called the Focus Formula. Now, again, this is drawing from the body of training modules that I've developed as part of my the Leverage Advice program and now the Practice Evolution program over the past, what has it been, 9 years now, 8 years. And ultimately, this is one thing that's really close to my heart, because it's about personal productivity. And regardless of what you're implementing in your business, finding time to work on the things that really matter is a common challenge, that no matter whether you're starting out, whether you're going through that dangerous middle and punching through into that place where you can start to grow exponentially, or you've got a big business with multiple, departments, productivity is relevant to everybody. And the story behind this particular session, which was actually delivered live at one of our 2-day accelerator sessions, the story behind it was that I used to do business planning with teams a little bit differently. And I would sit down and follow a process whereby we would look at it from quarter to quarter, and we'd come up with 3 projects that we would focus on doing each quarter. And those 3 projects, that would be the focus. And what I've noticed as part of this process is that most businesses over the quarter, they would do one project really, really well. The second one, they kind of do okay. And the third one usually didn't get started at all. And it wasn't until I read a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, it kind of crystallized for me, and I realized why the method wasn't resulting in the optimum, outcomes. And in particular, I wanted to share some of these insights with businesses at this session when I ran through this. And it's interesting because obviously we're not covering this in this particular session, but the session directly after this, the live 2-day event, was typically where we would sit down and everybody would sit down and they create a plan for the next quarter. And as I looked at the content I just delivered, which is all about, focusing on one thing at a time, and multitasking doesn't exist. It's called multi-switching. And, how if you focus on one thing, it gets you 100% of your progress. If you focus on 2 things, you can split it 40-40, 3 things, 25%. 25%. I kind of looked at the business planning template with the 3 projects. I looked at everyone and said, it's not going to work like this anymore. And everybody looked at me and went, well, that's true, Stu. You can't really focus on one thing and then ask everybody to plan for 3 projects. And so at that point, I said to everybody, I just want you to do 1 project over the next quarter. And if you finish that project, you can get a next project. And if you finish that one, which you won't, you'll get the 3rd one. And that particular quarter, that methodology ended up being resulting in the most productive quarter in the program. And since then, This has been a method I've embraced with something called domino planning, which is like a bunch of dominoes. You line up your projects, you invest some time working out what should be done first, second, and third, and then you approach it one by one. And that alone results in greater progress, faster traction, and a whole bunch of other things. So this is what you're going to listen to now. It's the genesis of that methodology. It's the session that came before the realization. And really, it's about asking this question that if you want to get as much progress as you possibly can in as little time as possible and really be able to focus down on the things that matter, what are some philosophies behind that? What are some methodologies to introduce it? So without any further delay, let me hand over and let's get stuck into another episode of the Finnovator. And this one's called the Focus Formula.
Hey there, Stuart Bell here, and welcome to the Focus Formula. In this module, I'm going to run you through, I think, one of the most important things in business, which is to be able to sort of isolate yourself and really get that headspace to do great work. If you read into the background stories of most successful people, you find often there's one thing that drives them, whether it's the one purpose that they focus on or their dedication or their ability to isolate themselves. Elon Musk talks a lot about his purpose behind wanting to do things. You speak to great sports people and they talk about their ability to sort of isolate themselves from the noise, the negativity, and all the rest of it is a huge part of succeeding. So I'd like to walk you through, a bunch of stuff produced by really smart people. I'm talking about stuff that the greats in productivity, from everyone from Dave Allen to Stephen Covey and others, as well as stuff that I personally use and I've seen great businesses apply in order to get the best results. In other words, we're going to unpack the formula behind being able to focus on the things that matter as opposed to everything in front of you. And I think, look, if I had to pull one illustration of this, which I think is the best of all, it's from this dude. Now, if you grew up like me, you remember Arnie as being kind of goofy, muscle-bound actor out of Twins, maybe even you remember him from like The Last Action Hero. If you're a bit younger, you might even remember him from Predator and how he got started. But what a lot of people don't know about Arnold Schwarzenegger is he was actually a self-made billionaire before he ever went near Hollywood. He made a lot of money out of property. Very smart dude, who came from a very poor upbringing in Austria. And if you ever get a chance to listen to Tim Ferriss's interview, it's a phenomenal interview of someone I think is truly one of the most driven people I've ever heard from. But one of the great movies I think to watch to get to know the real Arnold is Pumping Iron. This is the first movie he was ever in. And I think this was the moment that Hollywood spotted him and spotted his charisma. It's the story of, it's a documentary essentially, but it's the story of bodybuilding back in the 70s. And if you don't know Arnold from bodybuilding time, he was probably the most dominant bodybuilder of all time. Bodybuilding was made in his time. He's still generally considered to have one of the greatest physiques of all time. And that movie's phenomenal because essentially the core story there is the battle between him and Lou Ferrigano, who, if you remember the old Hulk series, you'll know for Lou. Now, Lou was, stuttering, very shy guy who lacked confidence. Whereas Arnold was the exact opposite. He's a very, very confident guy. And in particular, there's one story in this movie where Arnold's talking to the camera. And he talks about the fact that he's telling a story about how his father passed away and he got message in the lead up to a bodybuilding competition. And he says, I ignored it. I didn't go to the funeral. I blotted it all out because I need to focus on winning the competition. And his point was that's what single-minded focus is. Now, interesting, later on, he admitted that this was not a true story. He'd made it up in the camera. He'd embellished it. But even though the story itself isn't true, the comment from Arnold is still very relevant. And he said that, the concept itself, whilst that was an extreme version, is relevant. If you want to get really good at things, if you want to build an amazing business, if you want to be the best at a certain piece, if you want to achieve the lifestyle you want and build a business that's going to enable you to do it, you cannot allow any kind of negative force coming to deflect you. It's really relevant right now with everything that's going on in the industry, the challenges of trying to transition to a different kind of advice model, that if you are not focused on the things that matter, or alternatively, you get put off to one side by, the licensee demands that you have, what you think you should be doing, what clients want and you don't focus on the things that matter, then potentially you are slowing yourself down, if not completely getting off track. Here's the one big idea that underpins everything. One of the best books I've read in recent times is this one by Gary Keller with Jay Papasan, The One Thing. It was a New York Times bestseller, and it's full of some great concepts which I'm going to run you through. But I think the one that I really like is this one. I think one of the challenges is we're often taught that we can have it all. We can have a great business and be a great parent and have a great social life and do it all together. But the truth is, the real truth, especially now, with so much going on, so many different options, so much different media to consume, so many different platforms to go through, so many technology choices, is you can't. It isn't possible. And speak to anybody who's juggled a business and family, and they'll tell you it's about choices. You have to make trade-offs. You can't do it all. Your time is too limited. You can't do it all because life will offer a lot of things. You can't do it all because things are complex. You have to make choices between the things you want, the things you can do, and the things you can know. Because of three really dangerous shifts that have occurred. These three dangerous shifts are, in order, number one, the fact that, we live in an incredibly connected world. When the Internet of Things first came out, when we started talking about it as a buzzword, I don't think anybody quite realized the impact of being connected through your phone and your speaker and your TV and all these things, your iPad. And the truth is that sitting in bed and answering emails or picking it up first thing in the morning and getting stuck into work, A, it's not healthy, but B, it's not productive. The truth is that the things that you should be doing and the things that you end up being drawn to doing are often different things. And the very act, of pulling out that iPhone in the morning is actually all about sort of a dopamine release. And research has showed that this is the case. And one of the reasons we're seeing recently Apple come out with screen time restrictions and all this sort of stuff is because they know that this is not healthy. In many ways, digital devices are the new smoking. The second biggest issue that I think is really relevant right now is we live in a world that technology is all around us, and often we're distracted. We're distracted by open plan offices. I mean, whoever came up with the idea that open plan offices were good for productivity or good for anything is telling themselves a lie. The reality is open plan offices were implemented because of a lower per person per square foot cost to the business. It's an efficiency. It's a cost lowering thing. Even Google, who everybody thinks of as being the kings of, ping pong tables and bean bags, their whole structure of their office is made up on this concept of campfires and caves. Campfires being social areas where people can come together and collaborate, be open for discussion, but caves where people can go to do great work without being interrupted. And unfortunately, in many of our lives, in many of our offices, in many of the places we work, we're all campfires and no caves. The third one is pulling directly from the book, The One Thing. And it's this question of multitasking. That's a buzzword that came up not that long ago. But the idea that you can multitask, it's a lie. The truth is that studies have shown that multitasking is not doing two things at the same time or three things. It's actually switching from one thing to another quickly. And the problem we know is that when you switch, it costs you. It costs you time. It costs you the ability to get into the flow. There's a moment between doing the work when you switch, you have to reorientate, and then you start again. And this means it elongates the time taken to do things by a factor of 2 and 3. In the book, it asks this question: is multitasking productive? It's easy to assume that we don't have enough time to do anything in the day. And don't get me wrong, I get it that some days you could just run away with you, but this is not true. We have plenty of time, but the problem is we try and squeeze too many things into one day. If we took a little bit of the pressure off and we chose to use our time more appropriately, we would be able to focus on the one thing that's going to shift the dial, the one thing you need to get done, the one thing that will mean that other things that you think you need to get done won't need to get done because they won't exist anymore. And by definition, reach success. Keller makes the point that we double and we triple up in the hope of getting everything done, and it doesn't work. And as a result, we end up frequently stopping. We're like that bus. You ever get caught behind a bus? You need to get in a hurry and it stops and you just can't get past it. That's what most of our working environments are like. According to The One Thing, the average person working is interrupted 43 times a day, which is one time every 11 minutes. You should try it, measure it in your business. We wonder why people have such short attention spans, or they don't write great works of literature anymore. And the truth is that you can't create great content or do great work when you're constantly being pulled out of that important thinking time and that imagination time. The challenge here, if you don't get it wrong, if you don't get it right, I should say, and if you continue to allow this split focus, I see a lot of advisors who can't say no. They can't say no to certain clients. They can't say no to demands on their time. They can't say no to demands for information. They can't say no to being asked to come to PD day after PD day or being asked to meet with BDMs, all this sort of thing. They can't say no to clients. We did a great session at the Focus Accelerator with Chief Brabham, Jim Chief Brabham of the original bootcamp. And he made the point, and it really hit home, is you are not a slave to your clients, but too often we feel we have to say yes. And as Steve Jobs said, innovation, building a great company, however you want to put it, isn't about saying yes to as many opportunities as you can. It's saying no to 100,000 things. So when the thing that really matters comes along, you can say yes, but you can't say yes unless you say no. Many people, I guess, don't give themselves time to do the work because they fear that if they step out of the office, chaos will ensue. They can't not check their email every hour, or they can't, not go into the office for a week because things will break down. The truth is that sometimes you need to step away from things because if you don't, you're constantly keeping an even keel on where it is rather than trying to improve things overall. The environment doesn't help. Do me a favor now. If you have notifications activated on your phone, pull it open now and go to the notification center and close off as many of them as you can. Close off the email, close off the Facebook, close off the messages. You should be the one who dictates when you get this. The environment doesn't help. Open plan and more. And of course, you know what? When we're busy, what's the first thing that goes out the door? It's taking care of yourself. Eating the right foods, doing the exercise, taking time out, recharging, spend some time with the family. And the problem is, the more and more you neglect this, the more and more it starts to tell. If you don't get this right, eventually, we end up in a spiral down where the work pressure grows, your habits get worse and worse, you get burnt out, your energy goes. It starts with your time and then your energy, and then next thing you know, you're getting sick and your mental health and all the rest of it. If we get this right though, and this is what I want for you, is I want you to enable yourself to protect your time, whether that's going to be someone in your team or people in your team who are going to protect it, or just you putting up walls. You're going to say what happens when, and by definition, take control of things. And that's going to enable you to orchestrate who does what, when happens, fine tune your processes so that they're working for you, not against you. Hopefully, as part of this, you're going to be able to find a fast track, a way of doing things in less time and achieving the same result. And do you know what? Maybe you'll even achieve some freedom along the way. If you haven't met Jocko Willink, he's an ex-Navy SEAL, jiu-jitsu practicer, 6'3", speaks like this. He did a great audiobook called Extreme Ownership, which is great. Just one of the main reasons is the fact that he narrates it along with Leif Babin, and they both talk exactly the way you'd expect Navy SEALs to talk. But he made a bunch of points around ownerships and leadership, but the one that really stuck with me, one of many, was the idea that discipline equals freedom. If you can establish the right habits and structures and the working environment that works for you, well, then you get freedom from everybody else's demand, freedom from the bad habits, freedom from everything. You just have to follow the structure you put in place for yourself. So you have the power to take yourself from flustered or overstretched, spread thin, and get a real predatory focus. Have you ever seen a tiger look at you through the window, a dream world or wherever? And when they're stalking, they just look at the prey. That stare. That's what it means to have a predator focus. And that's what it means in a business to get the focus formula right. The goal is focus. If we get that right, we get a headspace. We get a sense of well-being, and we make progress. That's about three things. It's about the right habits, the right priorities, and choosing to spend our time in the right way. If you get the habits bit wrong, we end up drained, emotionally drained of time. If we get the wrong priorities, we end up, oiling the squeaky wheel, fixing the problem that's in front of us instead of the most important one. If we get the time bit wrong, we end up busy instead of productive. So the habits is about what you commit to doing until it becomes the new normal for you and for your team. Priorities is about what you identify as being more important than other things. And time is about how you and your team deal with the allocation tasks that come through. There's two shifts we need to make. We need to make the shift from, doing the work to instead stepping back and working out how you're going to do things. The second thing is make a shift from, having or being a cleanup crew, cleaning up all the mess that's created. Instead, having a pit crew where everything's coordinated and things get done. So before we kick on, we're going to write down now, what's the most productive habit you've ever adopted rather, and what was the impact that it had? It's really important because there's stuff you're doing right now. You might have stopped doing it. We know a lot of productivity tips. Productivity is one of the best selling things in the world. Books on productivity are sell. We know these things. It's a question of applying them. And that comes down to that real question. One thing. Are you seeing the one thing that you'd like to change yet? If so, write it down. So my job, I guess, as part of this module and all of the productivity stuff that's going to follow is I want you to be able to do a few things. First thing, I want to be able you to design your role. Decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And hopefully the things that you don't want to do, we're going to be able to find ways of deflecting them or just saying no. I want you to be able to build a bunker, and the image here is really sort of deliberate. A cabin in the woods where there's no phone, no reception, where you can go and just take some time out to think and do the really important work of thinking. There's another module called the Quarterly Think Tank. It's a great habit to get into, 3 days away. First day is where you kind of download, stop the brain from working. Second day, you start doing a lot of walking and just thinking. And third day, you start to write down what you actually want. Most productive 3 years of the time, 3 days of the month, but you can't do it if you're constantly surrounded by other people's demands. I'd love you to be able to debug your area. In other words, what I mean is turn off the notifications, remove the technology, just have in a certain space at a certain time what you need. If you ever watch NFL, now not everybody's game, but it's an interesting sport. And one of the great things about it is, the attacking team, they have a defensive line. And this defensive line's job, they're the big guys. Their job is just to stop people from getting to the dude with the ball, the quarterback. Because if the attacking team get the quarterback, they don't make any ground. They lose the play, they lose the game. But if they're able to defend their space, well, the quarterback can do his magic, throw the ball, and they can win. Really, you need, either through your own actions or that of your team, to have your defensive line. Your way of communicating, your time slots, your diary management thing, your email responses that other people can manage so you can get on with doing the good work. And to do that, we need to divert the traffic. And what I mean by that is we need to send certain inquiries, certain client things to other people away from your dedicated time when you do things. The key to this is a concept, again, drawing from the one thing around the domino effect. The idea behind this is success is built sequentially. Now, I've seen businesses try and do everything at once, trying to see success really, really quickly. And so they try and do 10 things, but it doesn't work like that. Most people who are successful over a period of time. 10-year overnight success stories are very, very common. And the only real control, the only thing you can change is the rate at which you do it, not multitasking and achieving things. And the idea here is we can all picture a lineup of dominoes, and we know what happens when you knock over the first one. In real life, it's not a matter of everything being lined up simple and straightforward with a clear starting point and delineation. It's everything's sort of bunched in, right? You need a service offer. You got to get your pricing right. You need more leads. You got to get your process. You got that staff issue. You need some, a new SOA. In the research that was put into this book, he indicated that highly successful people know that everything is not clear and it's not simple. So what they tend to do is every day ask, what's my lead domino? What's that first thing that I need to do, which will not topple over the second one? And this kind of ties back to that idea around discipline in picking what you're working on is really key. But again, and then again, it's all easy to assume that all successful people are disciplined. If you ever met highly successful people, that's just not true. There's not a consistent thing there. Success isn't about discipline. It's about just choosing the one thing to do right, not about doing everything the right way. And the point here is it's much like compounding. If you get the first thing right and that knocks over the second thing and the third thing and the fourth thing, it starts to get momentum. Much like compounding, if you imagine that first domino that you're knocking over is 2 inches tall, physics says that the first domino can knock over the second domino that's up to 50% larger. Well, by that rationale, if the first one can knock over the second one 50% larger and the second one knocks over the third one, which is 50% larger, and by domino 18, and we're increasing 50%, that domino's the size of the Tower of Pisa. By 23, Eiffel Tower. By 31, it's 3,000 feet higher than Everest. And by domino 57, that domino is almost at the moon. The point here is that the key is not to look at the big, hairy domino that might be number 16 or 20. It's to work out what number 1 is. Now, although I'm drawing upon expertise from own personal experience, from people on the program, from productivity specialists, I want to let you know that this isn't just a outside of our industry thing. There's a couple of case studies I want to direct your attention to. For those who don't know Jeff Rose, he's a US planner. And not that long ago, a couple of years ago, he wrote an article. And the sense of the article was around how he decreased his office hours in managing his firm from 40 plus hours to less than 8. Now, I don't know about you, but I think for most businesses I speak to be able to run an entire financial planning business with just 8 hours a week, that would be a pretty good result, right? And he indicated how he did it. Now, this sounds really simple, but number one, he just hired strategically to replace himself. That's really key. He didn't hire to support himself. He hired to replace himself. He hired an associate whose job it was to be him when he wasn't there, giving out advice to clients and providing service. He indicated in a lot of his articles he put out that he thinks that's where small business owners fail. They're scared that people couldn't fill their shoes. But he indicated that this was crucial. It takes a while to set up. And for several months, he indicated that he had to work longer than he needed to. But once it was done, once he'd worked hard once, he had a counterpart that was able to step into his shoes. The second thing you're able to do is start documenting processes. Now, I know people must tire of me always talking about process. But the sooner you start documenting your processes, doesn't matter whether you're small, big, or otherwise, the easier it's going to be to hand over this stuff and get rid of the sort of high-level tasks and smaller tasks. The third thing is to schedule time away. I mean, ultimately, if you're going to build a business that runs without you and you never test it out, if you never take the week off or the 3 days off, how are you going to know if it works? Tim Ferriss tells a great story about in his business when he felt his vitamin business was failing, when he just got on a plane and went to Amsterdam and didn't worry about it. And he spent 3 weeks, finally phoned the office, and when he got back, he realized that they'd worked it out. In other words, people had stopped using him as the crutch for decision-making and started to ask, well, have we got processes already that can help us? And the fourth thing he indicated is he changed his way of communication. He used email, texting, Google Chat, all sorts of things, but he actually got clear about how he was going to communicate. He uses Slack. Personally, I do not like Slack, but we use Voxer extensively, as well as Teamwork, our actual project management thing. But it's about understanding that communication has to be a process on its own. I want to give you another example. There's been a lot of talk recently about the 5-hour workday. I think they've implemented in Sweden, maybe even Denmark. And there's been a lot of chatter about it. We've got another module which talks about this, which you can have a look at. But I think one of the best case studies, particularly for this case, is a Tasmanian firm called Collins SBA, who are an accounting, financial planning firm down in Tasmania. And they implemented it. And they've written a whole bunch of stuff about how to do it. But they've actually been able to engineer it so they and their team get everything done within 5 hours a day. Now, this is key because if you're going to go down that route, it requires you to think differently. There is a common thread. I'd love you to be able to guess it. So there's a common thread between all these stories, and it's this. It's this idea that you can't make great progress if you continue to try and do it all. It is about reducing what you do and focusing not just on doing less, but doing less and doing the stuff that matters more. With that in mind, let's do a little exercise because this is a lot of it is about evolving on purpose. It's about not just allowing your inbox or what your staff want or what your dealer group says to build your business or how much time you got, but making a decision to evolve your business on purpose. So I want you to ask yourself the question, if you look back at your role now, what do you not do now that you actually did 12 months ago? Think about it from the perspective of, is there any admin you don't do? Are there any emails you don't respond to? Are there any documentation you don't put together? Is there any part of your workflow you don't manage? Is there any marketing that you don't do? Is there anything you don't do in the staffing space? And ask yourself the question, what did you start doing instead? And this is a key thing because there's no point just stopping doing things unless you refocus the time you're gaining from not doing things on the stuff that matters. Make a note of it. This is really key. I want to spot the evolution here. Okay, go back another year and ask yourself the same question. What were you doing 2 years ago in your role that you don't do anymore? Again, ask yourself the same questions. Anything you do for clients? Any admin you're not doing? Is there any type of work you just don't do anymore? Any type of work that you started doing instead of that? If you can identify what you're not doing, I want you to ask, okay, and what did I replace it with? And final question, if you've been doing this for a while, I want you to look back 5 years. Go back to 5 years from the day. Think as clear as you can. What were you doing in your business then that you're not doing now. And think about the number of staff you had. Were your premises different? Were you working with a different number of clients? Did you do reviews differently? Did you do it upfront? Were there certain, strategies you were recommending that you don't now? Make a note of this because this is key. It's really key we get this sequential. So do me a favor now. What do you notice about the evolution of your role? Do you notice that you're moving away from certain tasks, certain administration tasks? Do you notice that you're moving away from certain types of marketing towards other types of marketing? Do you notice that you're moving away from certain strategies towards others? Do you notice that there's certain habits, I guess, that you don't have anymore? Noticing this role evolution is interesting because most people tend to evolve away from stuff that they don't enjoy or they're not good at, and they aim to hand off to other people, and they evolve towards things that they want to do and matter. If your business has grown as a result of those changes, then maybe you should notice that or ask yourself questions about the link between those things. Alternatively, if your business hasn't grown, ask yourself the question whether or not the evolution away from things that, might actually be growing your business may be part of that. One thing I often say to people when they tell me that they want to grow the business or build processes, I ask them to open their diary. And the reason for this is typically whatever's in their diary tells me what's going to happen. In other words, cash flow or your calendar will usually indicate the outcome you're going to get. If you want to grow your business and you're not investing time, guess what? It's not going to happen. If you're going to build processes and there's no time in your diary to build processes, there's a good chance that's why it's not happening. And similarly, if your idea is to develop your staff, but you're not investing any time, well, you can't really expect to do it. If something is not given time, doesn't matter how much you want it to happen, it's not going to. So do me a favor now. What do you not want to be doing next year? So look at whatever you're doing now, which is holding you back, which you know is stopping you from growing the business you want. And make a note now that you don't want to be doing it. You don't want to be looking after certain clients. You don't want to be giving advice in a certain way. You don't want to be charging at a certain level. You don't want to be working with certain staff members. You don't want to be having to do certain things. You don't want to be producing content for your marketing program in a certain way. Write it down. It's really important. And then underneath it, write why you don't want it. Because why is really key. If you can connect with the cost of having to do this and what life would look like if you didn't, that's key. And do me a favor. Once you've got that, don't start by trying to invent it yourself. Find somebody else who you know used to do that task and hand it off, either on the program or by asking your peers, and ask them how they did it. Because frankly, it's easier to ask than try and create it by yourself. One final exercise I want to walk you through. If you're in a place where you can do this, I want you to sit back, relax your focus. Notice the view of the room around you. Let your peripheral vision sort of drift. Feel free to look around. Notice some of the details around you. Maybe you'll notice the wall, the windows, the furniture around you. You might notice the noises that are coming from outside. I want to notice the smells, the clothing that you're wearing, maybe people around you are wearing. Notice the temperature in the room. Try to ignore that itchy nose of yours. Maybe try to avoid yawning. Notice the curtains rippling in the breeze. The lighting in the room, is it harsh? What's your technology doing? Is it beeping at you? Is there a notification? Don't worry about your flight. It's not undone. Is there something you forgot to do? Are you wondering what the time is? What time is your next appointment? Maybe you feel like fidgeting or someone around you is fidgeting. Maybe you can taste something in your mouth. But now I want you to stop. Bring your focus to just one thing in front of you. Notice only that one thing. Try and look at every detail of it, the texture of it, the size, the smell, the color, the feeling. This is how, we could start every day by coming in and going, what's the one thing I want to focus on? So you can approach each hour, get some work done, and then go, right, what's the one thing I'm going to do for the next 50 minutes? Dealing with only what you choose to focus on, one piece at a time. One of the best books I've read about spirituality, I guess, was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And he makes a really interesting point that the past doesn't exist. It's just a memory in our heads. The future, same deal. It only exists in our head. The only thing that really exists is now. All of the past nows that have come have led you to where you are, whether you're talking about your business, your life, your relationships, your financial outcomes, and the current now will define your future. So by that definition, the only decision you have to make is what you do with each now as it comes at you. In other words, we choose one now at a time. In the words of the great philosopher from Kung Fu Panda, Master Oogway, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift, and that's why it's called the present. For me, this whole one thing focus comes down to one really key question put forward by the book. The question is this: what's the one thing you can do? And as a result of doing that, would make doing everything else easier or possibly even unnecessary. If this doesn't make a lot of sense as a question, let me frame it a different way. What wouldn't you need to do anymore if you could start by doing this one thing better? In other words, if you only saw clients that knew exactly what you did, would that make your need to get a value proposition or, demonstrate the value of advice or do different things for different clients unnecessary? If you could double the fees for your existing work, would that mean that your need to, desperately go out and find new clients in order to meet revenue targets? Would that change it? If you could train someone else to do what you do, would that mean that software system or having to get more efficient at producing an SOA would no longer be necessary? If you were the expert in your field, a specific field, would that make it easier? If you could hand over the management of the business to someone else, would that mean that you wouldn't have to have a business information system and drive processes? Or if you knew more about your prospects' financial issues than they did, would that make it easier to write marketing content that actually attracted them instead of just talking about things that you think they're interested in? You can apply this to multiple fronts as well. When you identify the one thing that will help your spiritual life or your physical health, maybe cutting out the booze or not eating bread. For your personal life, spending more time with friends. For your relationships, maybe having a date night. For your role, getting out of email and using Voxer. When you can identify the one thing on multiple fronts, you can take action. And when it's specific and big, in other words, it's not just I'm going to map one process, or it's not just, I need processes, or I'm going to map all of my processes. I'm going to map all of the processes that relate to my client engagement system between now and Christmas. And as a result, I'm going to hand it over to the team and they're going to grab it, record the videos, and we're never going to be in any doubt around what needs to happen. That's pretty specific. This works, according to Gary Keller, because it has 3 impacts. It makes you decide which actions have most value. The number of times that I have, got a accelerated pre-work thing back and someone selected, I've got 20 issues in my business, or, out of 20, they've selected 15 and 7 different things they need to focus on. That's not going to help. The best plans are the ones that have, 1 or 2 issues or one thing they want to focus and result in one really key project. Because when you have to pick one and only one, it makes you decide which is the most important. It acts as a filter, it removes the extra noise and just gets you focused on the things that matters. Whether it's, I need more leads, I need to charge better, it needs to be less me, I need to have a better service offer, I need to get rid of my D staff and get a really good support staff. And as a result, it causes that domino effect. So your challenge off the back of this, whether you're putting together your plan or you're looking through a module or you're trying to work out which software tool, is I want you to focus on one thing, one project, one software tool, one recruitment strategy, one area of your business. Take one action and make it a big one and generate one big result. One final thing I want to talk about in this module. If you've not met Ben Elliott, he is a performance coach that works with a number of different people in the program. I've worked with him myself. He's an absolutely brilliant man when it comes to this stuff. And as part of our program, he's recorded a track around focus and resilience. You can see it in the files here. This is a track that you get, sit back, listen to it, and it's aiming to give you focus. Whether you're working on this module, other modules, I really encourage you to use it. And if you want to use Ben's services, reach out to him, benelliott.com, and talk to him about how he can work with you to improve your performance. I think everybody can benefit from a performance coach at some point. Grab the track, find somewhere quiet. Don't do it while you're driving. Pop some headphones on. It's a great way of tapping your subconscious and how to build resilience to stay positive, particularly in the face of challenges. Gain confidence in your leadership ability and mentality, and build courage to do what's needed. Chief Brabham, in one of my favorite sessions from our last accelerator, the Focus Accelerator, he talked about the fact that the fundamental difference between very, very successful people and those who don't make it are very, very successful people are willing to do the things that others aren't. And sometimes that's about committing time. Often just it's about courage. So hopefully this has been useful. I'd love you to turn a little bit of what I've learned from the one thing and learned from other people, and really get that ability to focus on the one thing, whether it's in your business planning, whether it's your productivity, your role. And by doing that, more than anything else on this program, it will lead to you having the ability to realize the benefit of the work you're going to put in. And I think, you know what? If you can do that, that'd be the best possible outcome I can think of.
So there we have it, ladies and gents, another episode of the Finnovator under our belt and the Focus Formula. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, please, if you do enjoy it, just head over to the comments, leave us a review, and ideally leave me your name so I know who you are. And even if you don't know if you don't leave your name, I'm still going to read it out because I appreciate the review. A final reminder, if you're interested in checking out a little bit more of what I do, we now have our Practice Success portal. I'm incredibly proud of it. Head over to success.ourdiary.com.au. Just go through the registration process, and when you get inside, just introduce yourself and drop me a line so I can get to know who you are and a little bit more about you in general. Other than that, I hope you are traveling into this part of the year in style and you've got it all lined up for a really good break. And I'll see you soon in the next episode of The Finnovator.